In October, Cornwall's going to be used as a space launch pad, and the launch window is opening for the first satellite launch from UK soil, Cornish soil to be exact. And the head of Spaceport Cornwall is Melissa Thorpe, and I am absolutely delighted that I get to talk to her right now. Melissa, hello.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited. Can you describe the scene for me on the I'm assuming it's on the coast, on the Cornish coast, that this launch pad will be sited. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. But it's not quite probably what most people think of when they think of space launch. We're actually using a runway. So our airport, which is just outside of Newquay, we're using that as our launch pad. So it's a different way of getting to space. It's not entirely new, but it's definitely the first time we've ever done anything like this from Europe even. So it's a historic moment and the first time we've ever launched to space from the UK ever.
Okay, how will it work?
So what we're doing is working with our partners at Virgin Orbit, and they're a small satellite launch company, and they basically use a Boeing 747 jet to carry a rocket partway to space, so up to about 30,000 feet, where they deploy that rocket midair, and that rocket goes into low Earth orbit.
So is the rocket strapped to the jet?
Yes, exactly.
Underneath or above?
Its wing. Oh. Under its wing, yeah.
I'm thinking it's tilting. How heavy is...
Yeah, no, it's the 747s were actually designed to carry an extra engine under one of its wings. And so what Boeing and working with Virgin have done is created this amazing something called a pylon that will attach the rocket to that place that the engine used to be. And then when it drops it midair, the actual way to balance it is using the fuel. So the fuel goes from one side of the airplane to the other, and it balances it as it banks off. So it's an incredible piece of research.
Okay, talk to me about speeds. You said 30,000 feet, but talk to me about speeds to get there and then what happens at 30,000.
Yeah, so it's just a normal airliner, as if you were taking off on your way over to go on a holiday. So it will take off, enter the runway, go out in this first launch to the southern coast of Ireland, up to 30,000 feet. It will drop that rocket midair. Speed will depend on the payload, how heavy the rocket is, where it will deliver, in this instance, about 9 satellites to space. When you say drop the rocket... Yes.
Stupid question. I haven't had many of this programme. Stupid question. Is there an engine on the rocket?
Yes, so there's a...
So it drops off the plane and then the engine starts? Because it can't start while it's on the plane, can it?
Exactly, yeah. So there are actually 2 smaller engines on the rocket itself. So the first engine ignites to take it into space, where that stage then drops away, and then a second engine starts to take the satellites into the orbits that they need to go into. So it's quite a technical rocket. It's about 70 feet long, so 2 double-decker buses, and it comes in 2 stages. So the first stage is that first engine that takes it into space, and the second stage takes the satellites to where they need to be in the orbits.
So I'm doing my hand movements just to figure myself out. You've got the Boeing and you've got the satellite, and they're flying. When it drops the satellite, the rocket, how far apart do they have to be before it's safe for the rocket to launch its engines?
It's quite a decent distance, but it's only a couple seconds of drop of the rocket. But at the same time, the 747 is banking away from it. So you kind of have this double, it's still climbing and it's still banking at the same time, whereas the rocket's dropping.
Is it a space pilot or is it a normal plane pilot?
It's actually a normal plane pilot. And for our launch, it's very exciting that we have a RAF pilot that's going to be doing it. Stanny, his name is, his call sign is, and he's been training and has done a few launches out in California with Virgin, and he's going to be doing our launch. And then Kelly, this amazing woman, is going to be also in our cab as well. So yeah, 2 normal aviation pilots.
Now, has anyone asked if they can be on the 747?
Prime Minister, actually. We had the Prime Minister for G7, and he did ask if he could go on board. But unfortunately, we're only allowed a couple of members of crew on board and engineers, and that's it.
I'm very light.
I'm sure in the future we can make that happen.
It just sounds so brilliant. So how on earth, you've explained this brilliantly for me, thank you. What's the point of the satellite, by the way?
Well, we're actually launching 9 different ones. So each one has a completely different use, from monitoring our planet. So Earth observation is what one is doing. One is going to be actually tracking illegal fishermen around the coast of the UK.
How do
Another
you
one
track
is,
illegal fishermen?
you actually use the radar of the boats and heat mapping of where they are allowed to be, or where they're not. So a lot of them actually turn it off, their tracking.
I was going to say, that was my second stupid question. If they turn off their radar or their tracking, how can you track them?
So that's when the heat mapping comes in from the satellite. They can see where you see where they're not allowed to be. So take a piece of ocean where they're not allowed to be fishing in, and you can, with a satellite, track things that are coming into that area, and you can quickly see with our Earth observation what kind of vessel it is. And you can then remotely put into the emergency services on the ground to go and check it out.
What else will they be doing?
So we've got one that's going to be a really amazing startup from Cardiff, actually. They are building satellites to manufacture products in space in the future. So we don't actually have to send more products up there, as well as...
to maintain stuff up in space, maintain infrastructure.
Exactly. So anti-space debris, basically supporting the cleanup of space in the future, as well as designing a satellite that will be reusable as well. So they're an incredible company, Space Forge. That's my shout out to them. Have a look. They're really cool.
How do you clear up space? Sorry, I have so many questions. Thank you so much for being so patient with me. How do you clear up space junk?
I love answering questions. This is my job. So please never apologize. How do you clear up space? Well, it's a big question, as I'm sure most people have heard of space junk and space debris, and we're not treating space very kindly at the moment. And there's lots of great ways of doing it. So giant magnets that are collecting old, unused pieces of satellite and deorbiting them or putting them out into space further. But I think what I'm really interested in is looking at some of these satellites that can be fixed in space, basically a mechanic in space that could go along and fix satellites. So we're not having to replace them all the time. We can reuse what's already up there, rather than the carbon impact of launching and replacing these satellites. So there's lots of different really cool technologies out there that are starting to finally get invested in, which is really exciting for the industry.
So this launch is supposed to happen you're waiting for a license at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah, so the first time ever in the UK we've launched, and last summer we went through Parliament, was a piece of legislation allowing us to apply for a spaceport license. So it basically guides us in safety, hazardous materials, environment, and our carbon impact on the environment. And that piece of license is the last thing we need to safely launch to space. So we're just at the end of that process now.
Okay, so say the license comes through, when do you launch?
So our launch window looks like it's opening at the moment at around October 6th. So anytime after that, we'll be allowed to launch as long as we get that license through. So we're looking at an October launch now. And yeah, it's all starting to happen. It's feeling very real down here in Cornwall.
How do you get to be the head of a spaceport, and you're the only woman in the world who is a head of a spaceport?
At the moment, yes. It's, again, not a normal story, similar to our airport becoming a spaceport. I grew up in Canada, but I really loved aviation and aerospace as a child, but I couldn't fly because I didn't have very good eyesight. I ended up going into economics and becoming an economist, looking at marketplaces around the world, solely focused on aviation and aerospace. And then the council down here bought the airfield from the military and needed somebody to come and support it. This was about 12 years ago. So I was studying in London, and I moved down, my first job in the UK, and I was busy doing lots of other amazing technologies at the airport. And then Spaceport came along 8 years ago. So I've been part of it since it started. So I'm not a space geek. I'm quickly becoming one, but I'm definitely an aviation and aerospace geek.
I love geeks. I think geeks are the way forward. I'm geekish about so many things. Did you ever want to be a pilot?
Oh, for sure. So my dad flew in the remote parts of Canada, bombing wildfires as a child. So I grew up on these smoke jumping bases all over, very remote, around all these pilots, and I absolutely loved it. And that was definitely what I was keen to be. But yeah, no, genetics had other ideas for me.
You've sparked too. What genetics? What was wrong?
My eyesight. So that was, yeah.
It's a thing, that, is it? Yeah, it's annoying when that happens. I had 2 questions. One, Did you ever get to go up with your dad in the plane?
I did. I didn't go up on his big tanker, but I've been up in some of the smaller ones with him. Yeah, when I was little, we'd map fires together.
And we've obviously experienced wildfires here in the UK with the heat wave last month. Did he have any thoughts on that, or did you have any thoughts on that? Like how we could
Yeah,
tackle them?
yeah, it's interesting because there's not as many forests here as Canada, so we use different methods in Canada. Whereas you might, it seems very strange, but you might preempt a fire by starting your own fire, and that controls fires by burning, existing dry pieces of the land around it. So you did see some of the farmers doing that, which is quite interesting to see that dynamic, but not in a forest, but on a farm. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And I think it all comes down to, I grew up with Smokey the Bear, this mascot that was basically telling people, don't throw your cigarettes out the window. Most fires in Canada were started by people, which is really sad. And I think with climate change now and things becoming drier, as humans, we have to be more considerate about what we're doing, because it really can. One of my towns near where I grew up burnt to the ground last summer because of a wildfire. The whole town completely wiped out because of a cigarette. So
how big was the town?
It was probably about a population, I think it was about 2,000 people. So small, wow, but big enough that it's gone.
It matters, people's homes.
Yeah. So for me, seeing what happens over here in the UK on a smaller scale, but still, humans have a bit of responsibility where we shouldn't be throwing things out the window, especially cigarettes.
Absolutely. My other question for you, because you said you grew up around pilots and obviously wanted to be one, have you seen the new Maverick film, and is it anything like real life?
I went day one, of course I did. 100%. I was there literally in the cinema here in Cornwall. I was like, yeah, I've got to be there. Yeah, I do love it. I do. I absolutely. There's something special about a piece of machinery and what it takes to fly stuff like that. That's just incredible. I mean, superhuman, really.
If there is a young person listening who wants to be the head of a spaceport, what do they need to do?
I think the main message when I go and speak to schools is, because of my background, it's great. If you can be an astronaut or astrophysicist, fantastic, great. But if you can't, there's so many different ways into the space industry now and what you're passionate about. I'm an economist, and here I am and doing a spaceport. But you can look at how you grow food on the moon or Mars, or art in space is something that I'm really passionate about, getting more creatives in space. Just thinking outside a little bit. Space is not what it used to be. It's open to more people now. We use it every day when we pick up our phones. There's applications for every part of our daily lives. And to help the planet as well. I think that's a huge thing. And I know a lot of young people are really passionate about using space to monitor our planet, but also to hold people to account through observation and imagery is huge. So I guess for me, that message is just that: be inspired by space, but do it in a way that is something that you can be passionate about, especially girls. I'm really wanting to get more girls into the industry. I don't want to be the only female head of a spaceport. I want there to be loads of us out there. So that's, something that I'm really trying to do, is get in front of as many girls as possible and tell them they can do it.
Keep going. Melissa, it's been fascinating talking to you. I will find a way onto that plane. I just thought I'd warn you. Melissa Thorpe, Head of Spaceport Cornwall. Good luck with the licence as well. Thank you so much. It's been fascinating.